Let's try that again. Hello, kitties. How are you? This is Dr. Annette Feravich here. Sorry I ran a little bit late. I have been trying to get all kinds of things up and running for you this morning. And so here I am. And today we are going back to our Tales of Virtue book. And today we're talking about obedience. So let's go ahead and we'll get started. We're going to do just a little bit of review before I go into the story, because if you remember where we left off with talking about consonants and vowels. I had so much fun with you on Thursday doing those consonants and vowels. It's been a long time since I've taught that kind of a lesson, a very long time. And I never taught it that way, so it was a lot of fun for me. So I hope that you look at those. So what we're going to do is we're going to just do a little bit of review of that to kind of, remind us what we were talking about. We're not going to do the ABC song because we've done the ABC song so much. And you guys, you're watching it too. I'm so happy I have so many views on our ABC song. So you guys, I know you're watching it, and I hope that you're learning your ABCs with that Stephen Gregg? Yes, with the Stephen Gregg song. And then also learning how to pronounce those letters, right? And learning how to pronounce those vowels. So we're gonna just do a little bit of a review of what we have, okay? So what we have is we've got some worksheets out there, and these are the worksheets that we did with you on last Thursday, all right? So take a look at those worksheets. If you need them printed off, let me know. I got this checklist on its side so you can print this checklist off the way that it looks, but this is something new that I wanted to give to you, which is obviously a checklist. And this checklist has all the days of the week. This is from Classroom Must-Haves. I have the link below there, okay? So take a look at that, and you can get that, you can download that from Classroom Must-Haves all together, right? www.classroommusthaves.com, okay? And the way that the woman talked about using that checklist was what she did was she put it in a plastic holder, all right? And then she was able to write on that plastic on the outside. So you could always keep the clean sheet in there and then write on the outside your checks and things like that, all right? And then you always have a clean sheet, or print off a sheet once a week, whatever. But that's a really great idea to help you not only try and get things done for this class, which is probably less important than your real lives and the real things that you have to go and do, but that will help you with all the real things that you have to go and do as well. So if you have a checklist for your chores at home, and you should have chores at home, even if you don't have chores at home, it's a good idea maybe to make your own chore list, because those are good ways that we take on responsibility. Remember, that was one of our stories in here. It was on responsibility. I don't remember what our responsibility story was about. Do you? Adam and Eve, that's what it was about. Our responsibility story was about Adam and Eve, because they were taking responsibility for the Garden of Eden, right? So making chore list, maybe like making your bed. I found out that making your bed, even when the rest of your room is dirty, if your bed is made, your room kind of looks clean. So maybe making your bed as a chore list, maybe helping set the table for dinner, okay? I'm not sure if anyone sets a table for dinner anymore, but those are really nice things to do and talk about with your family that you'd like to sit down and eat together. That's always used to be a time when I was growing up where the family would talk about what happened during their day. And when my kids were growing up, more importantly, with my kids. What happened during your day? What happened at school? What did you learn? What might we do for the weekend? What are our plans? What sports games are you playing? What do I have to schedule? All of those things we did at the family dinner. And maybe you fill up the dishwasher as a chore, right? Put the dirty dishes in the dishwasher as your chore, or clean the table as your chore, or sweep the floor as a chore, right? Maybe you decide to dust the furniture as a chore. There are all kinds of things that you can do. And the word chore makes it sound so hard. But you know what? If you decide to do it yourself and you don't have somebody else tell you to do it, sometimes it doesn't feel like a chore then. It feels like my own choice. So take that list, write some things on that list that you want to do. Maybe you put your homework on there. Maybe you have a list of chores to do. Maybe you have to feed the dog. Maybe you have to take the dog for a walk, right? So those are the things you want to put on your list. It really helps us get organized. It helps our day not seem like it's just a crazy mess, right? And when we're organized, we get a lot of things done. Like this morning, I was actually organized because I was up at 5:30 this morning. No, 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock this morning. But I didn't get all my things done, right? So that's what organizing helps us do. It helps us get our things done and get places on time. Okay, we can't always be organized, right? But we can make an effort. We make an effort to be organized. All right, let's move on. Now, I put up the slides here for our ABCs so we can see our ABCs, right? Because maybe that's what you liked the best. Maybe you like working on your ABCs better than the story time. So I put those up there. I have the picture of all of our vowels crossed out except for Y, because Y sometimes is a vowel. Do you remember a word that has Y in it as a vowel? We talked about it on Thursday. We used the word gym, like in gym class, G-Y-M. G-Y-M. There, I. Y makes the I sound. Do you remember what other vowel makes the I sound? Do you remember what other vowel makes the I sound? As in gym. We're going to play basketball in gym today. J, I, do you remember? Now, we have another word with Y as a vowel that we talked about on Thursday, which was cry. Cry. Cry has a K sound in the beginning, but that's a C. Cry starts with a C. Cry. Cry. Do you know what the second letter is in cry? Cry. If C, R. Cry. And that's where we have our Y. The last sound is I. Cry. That's a Y. C-R-Y. That's how we spell cry. The Y is making what sound there? Cry. What sound is that Y making? It's making a long I sound, isn't it? Cry. A long I. It sounds like I. And what about gym? Let's go back to gym. G-Y-M. J-I-I. What vowel sound is that? I. That's a short I. That's a short I. So cry has a long I sound, and gym has a short I sound. So isn't that interesting? Y, when it's as a vowel, often sounds like I. Cry, try, why. All of those end with Y and are making the long I sound. How interesting is that? So do you remember? Our long vowels, they say their name, right? A, E, I, O, U. So A, E, I, O, U, those are our vowels. And when they are long, they say their name. A, as in crayon. Crayon, that's a long word. That has two stops. Crayon, right? That has two stops there. But we hear in the first stop the long A. Crayon. Crayon. Okay? Long E says its own name too, as in tree, as in tree. Long I says its own name as in wipe, wipe. Long O says its own name as in rope, rope. Do you know what rope ends with? Do you know what rope ends with? Let me think about this. When two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. And for a long vowel, we need two vowels. We need one to go walking and talking and one to be silent. Rope ends with a silent E. Remember bake? We were talking about bake. Ends with a silent E. Let's put that up because we have that one, right? So does rope. Rope ends with a silent E and has a long O. I bet you know how to spell rope now. I bet you know how to spell rope. It ends with an E. Can you hear the other letters? Rope. Rope. Can you hear those letters? I can. I bet you can. Okay. And then the long U as in, all of a sudden I can't think of a long U sound. True. True. That's true. True. Can you, and true, two vowels go walking. The first one does the talking. What does true end with? True. What does it end with? An E. Do you know how to spell true? If you know that true ends with an E, do you know how to spell true? True. True. T-rue. R-U-E. T-R-U-E. And I'm going to go back to rope to help you. If you didn't know how to spell rope, rope. R-O-P-E. Rope. R-O-P-E. Look at what you're learning. You're not only learning your letters, you're actually learning how to spell words. Do you feel brilliant? You should feel brilliant. That's, in this case, that means really smart. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Remember, we already said we learned when two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. And then we also learned our short vowel sounds. So let's practice that for just a minute. A, e, I, A. A, I, A, 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 A. A, E, I, A. A, E, I, A. Okay? Now we know our short vowel sound. So anytime we hear that sound, A, I, A. Bet, bet. We talked about this on Thursday, didn't we? Bet, bet. E, B-E-T. That is how you're going to learn to spell words. Isn't that awesome? But this is not our consonant and vowel day. I did say we're going to review it. That was on our agenda. So we reviewed them. And now we are getting to our story in Tales of Virtue. Okay? Yay, finally. And I see I did not walk my glasses down. So unprepared this morning. I really did work very hard this morning getting this stuff done. And I had other videos out there too. So let me be right back. I'm back. Okay, let's take a look at our story. Today, our story is on obedience. Obedience. And the main character's name for our story is Jonah. Okay, here we are. Our last story was on courage, wasn't it? Yes, and Esther had courage. So there's, if you remember, there's Esther and Malachi and the king as well. But we're on this story. This is our story here. Obedience. Okay? All right, obedience. I need you to do something for me, your father might say. You say to your father, I'm too tired. I don't want to. But when you choose to do what your mother or father tells you to do, that is obedience. This is interesting. We keep using the word here, choose. A lot of times when we see responsibility, when we see friendship, when we see, what else did we learn about courage? A lot of times we see the word choose there, choose. That means that you can make a choice. You can make a choice, right? Sometimes you're too tired and you don't want to, but you can choose, even if you don't want to still do it, right? And in obedience, that's a good idea. That's a good idea to obey your parents. Sometimes there are things that we don't want to do, and maybe and that's because they might be bad to do, right? And that might be the reason that we don't want them to do, or it could be wrong for us to do that, right? So we don't want to do that. But sometimes there are things that we should do and that are right to do. And even though they're right to do, sometimes we don't feel like doing them, right? Yeah, even though it's right, sometimes we don't feel like doing it. And that's what this story is talking about. And many of these stories are talking about that we can still make a choice to do what is right. Okay, all right. God wanted to help the people in the great city of Nineveh. He said to Jonah, go and help these people. Tell them to stop doing bad things. Okay. Well, they were Nineveh. All right, that's an old city in the Bible is what it is, okay? At first, Jonah would not listen to God. He didn't want to obey God. He wanted to do something different. So he tried to run away from God. Good luck, Chuck, right? Who's going to run away from God? How do you run away from God? I don't even know, right? But sometimes we do feel, look at Jonah. He didn't want to listen and he didn't want to obey. He wanted to do something different. Sometimes we do want to do something different, right? Just like it said in obedience there before. Sometimes we're too tired and we want to do something different, right? So Jonah wanted to do something different, but then he tried to run away from God. Who's hiding from God? I don't even know. Jonah wanted to get far away from Nineveh. He boarded a big boat that was sailing far away from Nineveh, but God was watching Jonah. Of course he was. Of course he was. Now, it's very interesting because God, if you know, here is Jonah. Okay, let's pretend that this is Jonah. Here is Nineveh, where God asked him to go. So Jonah only had to go whoop to Nineveh. Jonah, instead of going whoop to Nineveh, he went way over here. So Jonah went way over here. I think God kind of knew he went far away, don't you think? God sent a storm so big that the boat almost broke apart. The sailors were afraid. They said to Jonah, "Are you the reason for this bad storm?" Jonah said to them, "Yes, I am the reason. But if you throw me into the sea, it will stop." Wow, that seems very brave of Jonah. He let them throw them into the sea. There was a big storm, and the sailors thought Jonah was the reason for the big storm. And Jonah said, "Yes, I am the reason." And then they threw him into the sea. So the sailors did what Jonah said, and the storm went away. Isn't that fascinating? Fascinating. Fascinating. 4 stops in that big word. That means it's very interesting. I'm very curious about that, right? I'm very curious about having a bad storm that stops when Jonah got thrown into the water. Seems like God was paying attention to Jonah, if you ask me. Soon a great fish came up and swallowed Jonah. Jonah prayed very hard to God from inside the fish. Look at, he's inside the fish. What the heck? How could that be? He said, "Please help me. I am sorry." After 3 long days and nights, God saved Jonah. Well, thank goodness the whale didn't chew, right? And thank goodness the whale had a big stomach. Ooh. The great fish spit Jonah out onto dry land. What? What? That is so fascinating. I can't believe it. Do you think that could happen? Do you think a whale could swallow a person and then spit him up? I actually do. I think that could happen. I think they don't have to chew. They swallow fish like this, right? They go swallow the fish just like that. Take a big open up their mouth and then all the fish swim in. So they don't have to chew the fish. They probably can. I don't know. It seems so strange, doesn't it? I've never seen a fish chew. So I don't know, but it seems to me that somebody could end up, the whale is big enough, that could happen. That could happen, it seems to me. Then God said to Jonah again, "Go tell Nineveh and go to Nineveh, not go tell. Go to Nineveh and help these people. Tell them to stop doing bad things." This time Jonah listened to God. This time he decided to obey God. He went to Nineveh and told the people what God had said. Wow, okay. So now he's obeying God. And the king of this great city said to his people, "Stop doing bad things and start loving God." That's a pretty good rule. And the people did. I wish it were that easy. I wish I could tell people, stop doing bad things. You know they're bad things. Stop doing bad things. And listen to God. I wish I could tell some people that. Hooray! God saved the city of Nineveh. Jonah obeyed God, and God was glad. When your mother, father, or teacher tells you to do good things, do you obey them? When God tells you to do when God tells you good things to do you obey him? That is what Jonah learned to do. That is obedience. What a great story. Oh, look at the next stories on sharing. What a great story. Isn't that interesting that somebody could get swallowed by a fish? And not only that the king said, stop doing bad things and start loving God. And the people did. Why did Jonah run away from Nineveh? That seems strange to me. Why did he run away from Nineveh? And then, don't you like this picture? Look at that picture. Look at Jonah over here. Jonah always looks like he's not sure. Well, there he looks kind of sure, right? But here, look at him. He doesn't look like he's very sure. He doesn't look like he likes that king very much, right? But that king really likes Jonah, doesn't he? But Jonah's like, hey, what's going on over here? Seems like a lot of times Jonah's like, hey, what's going on over here? I'm in a fish. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Jonah that I know about Jonah that I think makes this story just a little bit more interesting. And that is this. Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh because they were bad people. That's why the king had to tell them to stop doing bad things. And this is the thing about Jonah. In a way, Jonah didn't want God to reward them. Jonah knew that they were bad people, and that if they were good people and listened to God, God would reward them. And Jonah didn't like them. Jonah didn't want them rewarded because Jonah didn't like them. Now, why didn't Jonah like them? He had a good reason again. They were bad people. They were very bad people. So Jonah had a good reason for not liking them. But God told Jonah that you need to go there and tell the people about me. You need to tell the king about me. And Jonah didn't believe that those bad people would ever be good. That's why he didn't want to go. And plus on top of that, if they're bad people, then Jonah might be in danger. Jonah was afraid of those bad people. He was afraid that he would be in danger. And so that's why Jonah ran away. He was afraid of the bad people. He didn't think that the bad people would turn out to be good people. But what if they did? What if the bad people turned out to be good people and then they got God's reward? Well, Jonah didn't want other people to have God's reward. Jonah kind of was a little selfish about wanting the rewards for himself and for his people. Remember, Esther had her people, right? Remember that? And remember that the king had to be nice to Esther's people, decided to be kind to Esther's people when Esther had courage to stand up for her people. That's the same thing with Jonah. Jonah wanted all the rewards for his people. They were the same people as Esther's people, the Israelites. He wanted all the rewards for his own people. But God has big arms, and God is a father. So God wants all of his children. He wants to hold and hug all and love all of his children. So even though his children were being bad in Nineveh, God still wanted to have his children be nice. That's what a good father does. They want their children to come back to them, right? And to be good. That's what a good father does. So that's a little background on that story, which makes, in my mind, that story very interesting. Okay, let's get to our questions now. We have to go through all of our worksheets over here before we get to our questions. But they're not that long. I don't know why it takes me so long to get through them, though. This is a book about right and wrong. In our story on obedience, how is this a story about right and wrong? Okay, I want you to think about that. And I want you to answer that on your own. A lot of these questions that we have here, I can help you answer, but that doesn't make any sense. I want you to think about the story, right? You to think about the story. So this is a book that we said, a book of right and wrong. That's what this book is. So what were some things that Jonah did that was right? What were some of the things that Jonah did what were some of the things that he did that were wrong? Okay? I thought he had so much courage. I'm just going to say, I thought Jonah had so much courage in that boat to say, throw me over the boat. And then he got swallowed by a whale. So that's a lot of courage to me, right? Courage. But we're not talking about courage. We're talking about obedience. But I just thought that was a lot of courage. So that was something that I thought Jonah did right. So I kind of gave you a hint on that one. Getting thrown over that boat when there was a big storm and that could have hurt those other men in that boat. That was really nice of Jonah. All right, let's see. What's our next question here? What is obedience? What is obedience? So, do you remember what obedience is? I'm going to open up the book to that page, and then I'm going to let you look at the page and see what it says there, all right? But I'm not going to tell you. I want you, first of all, to think, do you remember what obedience is? Try and see if you remember what obedience is, okay? And then I'll hold up the book there, and you can take a look at it if you can. So if you can't read this and you don't remember, maybe you can ask somebody to read it for you. All right? All right, and then that will help us remember. But I don't want to give you the answer, because today we want you to think and try and figure out the answers on your own. Then we'll come back tomorrow and we'll talk a little bit more about it, okay? All right. So what is obedience? How did Jonah not only show obedience, but also courage? Because this is where I like to also try and remember or think about some of the other words that we've learned about, some of the other virtues that we've learned about in our tales of virtue. Did you ever try and run away from something that you had to do? What happened? Did you ever try and run away from a responsibility that you had to do or something that you knew that you had to do that was right? Did you ever run away from that responsibility? And then what happened? So tell somebody about that. Maybe you have a friend that you want to tell. Maybe you have a friend that you want to tell that you heard this story on this morning early bird classroom, and maybe they want to watch it with you. And maybe that's what you do. You sit and eat breakfast together and you watch this, and then you could talk about what are the answers together. Or maybe you talk about it with your brothers and sisters, right? Okay. 0 dropped frames. That's awesome. What are things that you do that show that you obey? So can you think of things that you do? I've got the wrong time on there. What in the world? Seriously, I change these things a million times. How do I still have the wrong time on there? What are things that you do that show that you obey? And I would maybe you could put that even on your checklist, or you could put things, if you don't do a lot of things that you obey, maybe on your checklist you can put some things that you're doing that you obey. So make sure that on your checklist you have did something that your parents asked you to do, or did something that your teacher asked you to do that you didn't want to do, right? Then that shows that you obeyed. So, what are some things that you have done that show that you obey? And that's it for our classroom today. So we are finished just a little bit early with our early bird classroom. And tomorrow we will be doing more of our consonants and vowels. So we'll plan on working on that tomorrow, and then we will be back on Thursday with another story and more questions. Okay? So keep working on your consonants and vowels, and I will see you back here tomorrow at 8 o'clock.